Hi, welcome back to Unleashed at Work and Home. I'm really excited today that Kim Imel is joining me, and she's going to be talking about her work with the Positive Dog Prison Training Program, which was a place that I got to visit several years ago and see the men working with shelter dogs to make these dogs available, trained, and ready for adoption to find new families. So thank you, Kim. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Our theme today, for which you are perfect, is second chances. And what better concept for second chances than a prison dog training program?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's our motto, providing a second chance for both ends of the leash.
Providing a second chance for both ends of the leash. I love that. So, well, tell me a little bit about how you got started in this.
Oh, gosh. It was kind of dropped in my lap, so to speak. I was on staff with the shelter that was partnering with this program at the time. And I was on staff not in the capacity of a dog trainer, but as a licensed vet tech in their spay-neuter clinic. And there was one Thursday morning in July that we were at our staff meeting, and our executive director at the time said that, you know what, we're going to be partnering with Airway Heights Correction Center to start up a dog training program. And at that moment, I was trying to figure out how I can sneak out of the room and run away. Because I was the only professional dog trainer in the room. So, needless to say, I tried to avoid it. She looked at me and said, we'll talk later. And I spent several days avoiding her. I would see her and I would just take off and go into somebody else's office and hide. But eventually she cornered me and said, hey, this is yours. Let's run with it. Reluctantly, I started it. I had been teaching group classes for quite some time with Diamonds in the Rough, and was comfortable teaching group classes, so that aspect didn't bother me one bit. But I had never actually developed a full program, never actually wrote curriculum, created an outline, any of that. So I quickly, before I finished talking with the executive director, I was on the phone with Carol Burns saying, I need you to review my stuff. So she agreed to come on as an advisory role to help me get this going. We worked on some stuff and went and toured the facility where the dogs would be living a couple months later. And at that point, she said, I'm in. I don't want to be just an advisor. And about 6 months after that, we took our first dogs in.
And remind me again when that was?
Yeah, that was, we started working on the program the end of July 2011. And our first dogs actually went in end of April 2012. And anyone who's ever worked with DOC or government knows that that's actually fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad to say, but very true.
6 months. 6 months from the go ahead is pretty good time frame.
Awesome. So typically, how long does a dog stay in your program?
They are there for a total of 11 weeks.
So with the second chances concept, I have to admit, so at APDT, and I don't actually remember which year it was that we visited your program. Do you remember?
13.
It might have been.
I think that's when it was here in Spokane.
Okay, so APDT, for those of you who don't know, is the Association of Pet Dog Trainers, and it was in Spokane, and they said, if you'd like, you can also go visit the prison dog program. And I will admit that I was kind of a skeptic, because there was a part of me that thought, I don't know if this is right for the dogs. I don't know if this is a good environment. I don't know if I think this is fair. And so I went, and I was blown away by the testimonies from the people who were involved from every level. The men in the program, the trainers who worked so hard with their dogs, to the teachers who were working with them, to the guards who were telling us how awesome the dogs were. And I sobbed for 2 hours. Literally just cried the whole time. It was really an amazing experience. So I'd like you to maybe tell us a little bit about some of the changes you've seen in either people or dogs. Well, actually, let's start with the dog one, and then we'll do a people one in a minute. But tell me about a dog, because obviously you're taking pretty good dogs in, because they need to be dogs you expect to be placeable in 11 weeks, but a dog who really deserved a second chance and got it through the program.
Yeah, and the dogs that we take in, think you're out of control, wild, crazy, adolescent dogs. The ones that families just say, forget it, we can't take it, and they take them to the shelter. those are the ones who keep coming back. And they keep coming back to the shelter. So those are the kiddos that we try and take in because we don't want them coming back to the shelter again. We want them to be able to go into that home and be successful in that home. We've worked with some that are shy and worried. And one of the ones that really, there are a couple that stick in my mind. And one was a dog named Lucy. And Lucy was, oh gosh, a herding breed. She was so skinny when we first took her in. She almost looked like an Iberian hound. She was so skinny. And she was afraid of everything. She couldn't do the stairs. She couldn't walk across the concrete floor. A door closed. She was worried. She wasn't overly concerned about the sound, so because we review for that before we take the dogs in. Mm-hmm. But her handler did everything he possibly could to help her. To the point that he would lay down on the floor so that she could be right next to him, and he would crawl along the floor so she could have constant contact with him, get from point A to point B. Yeah. This was a dog who probably, in full body weight, was about 50 pounds, and he was carrying her up and down the stairs until she was ready to actually walk up and down the stairs herself. And it was her getting this chance to go in and work with somebody who's willing to put that extra effort into it. Mm-hmm. She blossomed. There was another dog at the same time who was a fairly confident, rambunctious dog, but very, very good with the other dogs. And the handlers actually ended up identifying that Cassie, the other dog, would be a very good teaching dog for Lucy. And so they worked together in training sessions side by side and to help build the confidence in Lucy, not only through her work with the handlers, but also being able to see Cassie do her work.
How cool.
Yeah.
It's really empowering on so many levels.
Yes.
That helping Lucy, meeting her where she was, I think is the key, Yep. Like, she can't do the stairs. She is afraid. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to lie on the floor and move with her so she can become more comfortable in an environment that's really generous and kind and accepting.
And that's what we see with the handlers. Mm-hmm. More than anything, we see that time and time and time again.
So tell me a little bit about some of the handlers.
Oh gosh, wow! We have seen Lucy's handler he's no longer with us. He's moved on to another facility and kind of heading up getting involved with their dog program. But he was one that he came in, and his reason for being in prison was burglary, robbery, and assault, severe assault, nearly killing a person. And I say that because he has openly said that in interviews and whatnot. And he was one that was constantly getting in fights. He was always back-talking and causing problems for all the officers. He was one going to segregation a lot. And he got into the program. Nobody believed that he would succeed, that he would be good for the program. And with him, we saw a 180 shift. He completely changed directions. He was one of the kindest, most generous souls that you've ever met. He is somebody that on the outside, I would work with him in a heartbeat. Had amazing skill, and he had a real connection with our shy dogs. He was helped Lucy, and he was one that any dog who was shy or worried, he had this amazing nurturing as well as just technical skill. We got reports time and time again from staff saying, I cannot believe that is the same person. The reason that he actually left our program before he moved to another facility because he started thinking about he's going to be getting out. Mm-hmm. And he needs a plan for getting out. So he took a different job within the facility so he can earn a little bit more money to start saving more. He told me face to face, he said, if I get out and I don't have a little bit set aside, I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. He says, and I don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. And so I congratulated him for leaving the program at that point, once I knew why he was leaving.
Right.
He ended up moving to a different facility because they offered a different vocational training that he knew he was going to be able to then build a skill that was going to be able to provide for him once he got out.
So when I visited, there was a man who had sort of a similar story where he said he was a fighter, always getting into stuff, and that he knew that if he got into a fight, he was out of the program. And so he was really changing his behavior in the way he interacted with people in the prison, because it was so valuable to him to be a member of the program.
Yes.
How many people join your program and are unable to complete? Are most of them able to do what needs to be done to participate?
Great question. We do actually have a high turnover. Some of the turnover is because some of the men are leaving, they're going home, but we do have somewhat of a high turnover because we do get several who come in who think that it is all about just playing with the dogs. Mm-hmm. And they don't realize that when they join the program that it's so much more, because we work on book knowledge and really understanding behavior, not just the mechanics of training a dog, but understanding the behavior behind it and why we do the things that we do, the way that we do them. And those people who have come in and left didn't realize how much work there was, and so they move on. And we often hear from other handlers who are in the program who know them within their living units, these gentlemen who leave early. They say, he can't stick to anything, or that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but your expectations were pretty high, at least back then. You were having them read books that I think most dog trainers should read.
Yes.
But I wasn't expecting that for a volunteer program. This is your fun thing you do in prison. I guess that's the wrong phrase, but that's sort of what I was thinking. Was like, you show up and help train some dogs, but you don't have to read, Culture Clash or some of the books that are theory. And they were reading them, and one of the people mentioned that he didn't read well in English, and so someone else was reading to him, and then they were discussing what the content was, and I was just really blown away. Just the level of commitment to the learning, and you've put a pretty high bar there.
I think part of the reason why we did that, one, that's a lot of who Carol and I are, and so if we're going to be involved with the program, we're going to go by the same standards that we would out in the real world, that we would with colleagues. And these are gentlemen who are not teaching their own dogs to do things, so that's where it's different than teaching a standard group class out in the real world. They are being hired to teach dogs who are then going to go to somebody else's home. So if they are doing that, we need to raise the bar a little bit. Mm-hmm. We both also, after we toured the facility that first time, we went to lunch afterwards, and we both looked at each other almost at the same time and said, this program has nothing to do with dog training.
Yeah.
This program is about changing the way these men think and do, and in the process, a few dogs are going to get trained.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So what made you realize that it was so much bigger than dog training in that initial conversation?
Yeah. I think for me, it was going in and actually seeing a prison on the inside. Mm-hmm. Because up to this point, I had family members who were in law enforcement. So, you heard about arrests and, you knew about trials in prison, and you had your police dramas on TV. And of course, I watched Shawshank Redemption. And so that was my only experience with prison. Mm-hmm. But actually walking in and seeing this, and seeing real living, breathing people, looking at, when we went into living units, seeing artwork up on the walls that they had done. Mm-hmm. And saying, oh my God, there's amazing talent in this place. Beautiful artwork that some of the men have done. There are some gardens that are at this facility, and knowing that they are all cared for by the offenders who live there. And all of a sudden, just making that connection. These are real people. These are people that are going to be getting out. These men might be my neighbors someday. And also, just that realization of what does it take for a person to have to make that choice, or for a person to make the choice to do the things that they did to end up where they're at. Mm-hmm. Something is in there that told them that they weren't good enough, that they weren't worth it, that they weren't, that this was the only way. And we know it's not the only way. That if you have determination enough, if you have enough of a commitment, you can do pretty much anything you set your mind to. And so I think it was just like this snowball thing that started thinking about this, and everything just started going, and realizing this was a lot bigger than we ever imagined it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was part of it was just that gut feeling that there's no explanation behind it other than you just knew this was going to be bigger than dog training. And it needed to be.
Yeah. And it is. I mean, when we really start looking at behavior, like you said before, the ripples go beyond just the interaction with the dog.
Yes.
That the one man, the people who lived with him and the guards were saying he's different. It's not just that he's restraining himself from fighting. He's actually different because he got an opportunity to learn about change and to practice it and to evolve. I mean, because we can't just flip it like a switch and go, look, I'm magically different now. It's baby steps.
Yep.
And a lot of motivation.
And knowing that it's not always going to be steps forward. Mm-hmm. But there's steps back. Being okay with that. Realizing it. Being accountable to it. And then progressing forward from there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we were just, we were confirmed in our thought by the guys. Because one of the first books that they all have to read and study, because they have to take a certain test, they have to take a test before they actually get a dog. So we know that they kind of understand a little bit about what they're going to be doing before we just hand them a living being. Mm-hmm. But the book is, Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor.
Yeah.
And so that's mandatory reading for all of them. And we had several of our handlers come back and say, if my parents would have done what we were doing in this book, I don't think I would have been here today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've had several who have looked at that as a new way of parenting, of working with their kids when they get out.
There was a man who said that when we went. He said, if my father had known these techniques, I wouldn't be here today, and this is totally changing how I'm interacting with my son. And I was already sobbing, so there was just more sobbing. But I thought that's really powerful, and it's so true, because I think as people we're sort of hardwired for the negativity, and that leads to suppression. I don't like that behavior, so let me tamp it down. And those techniques are not the right ones. They're not the right ones for dog training, and they're not the right ones for raising children, and they're not the right ones for interacting with the people in your life, even if they're not children. Yeah. So learning new skills is tough, but we have to be open to giving someone a second chance. And as I said earlier, I was a little uncomfortable when I went to, because there was this judgy part of me. I mean, to be honest, just a little bit of like, well, you had your chance and you messed up, and now is it safe for these dogs to be here? And a story that Carol told me, and again, it's a few years ago, so I hope I'm getting this right, but at dinner afterwards, when I'm telling her, I'm blown away I was, she said there had been an incident with a fight in the yard, and that afterwards the initial report was that there were no dogs in the yard. But then when they went back and reviewed the video, there had been 3 dogs in the yard, and each man had scooped up his dog. They were all relatively small in the group I saw, and covered him with his vest, and then put the dog up to a wall and put his body to protect the dog. Yes. And I thought, oh, okay. I mean, this is putting someone else's needs first, recognizing what they need. Gosh, it's going to make me teary 5 years later. But that's a real growth moment for someone who, what did you say? Burglary, robbery, and assault. For someone who might have a history like that to go, oh no, things are going bad. What should I do? I should protect this one right near me. That's someone worthy of a second chance.
And that gentleman, he was actually one of the guys out in that yard protecting his dog.
Was he?
Yeah. He threw himself on his dog to protect her, to keep her safe from the fight that was going on, and to keep her safe from what needed to happen to break up the fight that was going on.
Yeah. That was really awesome. I think we talk a good game about giving people second chances, but just like I was in that moment, we're not always ready for us to be the one giving that chance. A little bit of like, well, somebody should do that, but not me. So it's awesome that you're doing this, first off, but that these men are really taking advantage of this chance, which means that they will then be people who probably give others second chances too. And then their children will be people who give others second chances. This is the way we can start making changes.
Absolutely. And that is our hope with this. And my hope has always been, no matter how long I'm involved with this program, if just one man gets out and changes his life and changes the life for his children, and he is the cycle breaker, all of the stress, all of the struggles, all of the sleepless nights are worth it.
Yeah.
So they're totally worth it. And it's amazing to watch these guys grow and develop and learn to work with one another. And when they're struggling, to come to Carol and I on, class day and say, I've tried, maybe you can tell them, but I've tried telling, and for us to be able, but to make that choice to not possibly fight or get in their face about it, but to make that choice to walk away and hand it off to somebody else, that's a huge decision on their part too. That's a huge choice on their part.
Yeah.
It allows Carol and I to work with them and the staff who are involved with this program to work with that particular offender to say, well, what if we rephrased it this way, and try working with some reframing. And if it doesn't work necessarily in that situation, we see that then that particular handler has now a new tool in his tool belt, and he tries the next time he comes up with a similar situation. So it's just amazing to watch these guys grow.
Yeah. And reframing is a really powerful tool in terms of mindset and the way you look at things. And it sounds, I think, really simplistic. The first time someone says, well, what if you look at it this way? You're like, yeah. But if you can sort of stop and think about what is another way I could look at this situation or another way I can approach it, it's like the main tool. It's a really strong, powerful way of changing things.
It is, and one of the things that I always go back to with the guys is just at the basic of it is the prison can be who they are, or can simply be their address. Mm-hmm. It's how they think about things, it's how they look at it, and not to, just because this is where you're at this moment in time, that doesn't mean where you're going to be. Mm-hmm. You have a choice. Yeah, you're here for now. Okay, fine, deal with it. But you don't have to be here forever. So you don't have to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So before we started recording, you started telling me a little bit about one particular family, and I'd love if you could share this with the listeners, about a father and son who had sort of fractured relationship. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. One of our handlers, he was this great handler, tough guy, but he talked about, after being in the program for a little bit, he was one of the several who had commented about the Don't Shoot the Dog book. Had my parents done this, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. We've had that said by many of our handlers. But he was realizing how, like you say, fractured his relationship was. The day that he was arrested and ended up in the prison, his son was there, and his son witnessed the arrest. At the same time that he was taken away from home, the family dog was taken from home. And so this boy lost his dad and his dog, and basically was, from my understanding, from him telling the story, was that his son hadn't forgiven him over it, and they basically didn't have a relationship. It was completely broken, and he had a broken relationship with other family members. Once he started going through the program and started reading and working with the dogs and seeing how his actions can help with that dog, he was able to start talking with his son, because not only was he learning these skills, but now there was this common thing between the two of them, and that was the dog. Mm-hmm. So for visiting, he would go and he would talk about what they were doing in class and how he was training his dog and what the dog was learning. And so all the conversations initially evolved around the dog. But through that, he ended up rebuilding his relationship with his son and started talking about more than just the dog.
Yeah.
And talking about life stuff. He also, this handler also had his fiance buy a copy of the Don't Shoot the Dog book so that he can leave it in the visiting center. So other families can then see that book while they were there and read it if they wanted to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was very much supportive of that. But it was through working with the dogs and learning what he was learning that he was able to repair this and have a different way of parenting when he got out. And he's been out now. He's been out for, I think, a good couple years. And my understanding is doing quite well.
It's nice that you get some sort of update at times on some people, because I imagine you often don't. Is that true?
That's true. We actually can't, as volunteers, we cannot have contact with the people who've been in the program for a year after they leave. So when they release, we just had a gentleman release about a month or so ago, and we can't have any contact with him for a year. And so after that year's up, then they can contact us if they so choose. We have had contact. The gentleman that we just spoke about is following the Facebook page and has made comments on the Facebook page. So that's often how they start to reach out. Mm-hmm. We have another handler who released, and about a year after he released, contacted Carol through the Diamonds in the Rough email address because he was now working as a dog trainer.
Was he?
And working as a dog trainer, and he had a case that he was struggling with, and so he was contacting her for some advice on how to handle that issue. So yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, but no, we've seen it time and time again. Talk about family members that they have lost contact with or don't speak to, that all of a sudden the family members start following the Facebook page, and then conversations start between the family members and the handler. And we start seeing the building, and it's all through the dogs.
And the men in the prison can't see the Facebook page, but you share some of that information with them, right?
Yeah, and what they do, oftentimes their family share it. So when families call or they come for visiting, they'll share things. We are able to take, when adoptive families have shared pictures with us of the dogs in their new homes and how things are going, we are able to take a portion of that information back with us and share. So we can share pictures of the dogs in their new environments as long as there's no identifying information in that picture or humans within that picture.
Yeah. Well, I bet they love seeing a photo of the dog, laying in the grass in his new house or whatever.
Yes. Because they become very, very attached to these dogs, and they're concerned about them for the rest of the dog's life. They want to make sure that the dogs are okay and doing well and things are going well. We get questions all the time. Have you heard about so-and-so? How is so-and-so doing? And they're always thinking about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many dogs do you currently have in the program?
Right now, we are kind of in between. We have gone through some administrative changes. The original shelter, who was partnering with this program, who I was originally employed by, they have gone through some structural changes, and one of the changes was to no longer participate in the program, which meant the program's still going to go on, and it is still going on. It was just getting another shelter partner to be a part of it, because we have to have a partnership with DOC between the shelter. And again, we're dealing with DOC and government, so things take a little while, but I think everything is finally lined up, and hopefully we'll be bringing in some dogs very soon. We have actually been without dogs for about 5.5 months.
Oh, wow. Everybody's probably itchy by now.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Everybody's itchy. The guys have a hard time going 2 weeks between sessions.
Yeah.
When we take our little break. So it has been really hard on the guys, but I have to give them a ton of credit for hanging in there. There are still classes going on, so doing bookwork and lectures and watching videos, training videos, and we just had Dr. Letitia Finucci come up from WSU. She heads up the behavior department down at WSU to talk to the guys about anxiety and how dogs learn. So they were able to listen to a veterinarian, the veterinary side of things. And yeah, so we've been able to still do a lot of work, but we haven't had any dogs yet. So everybody's not, even the staff.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
staff.
yeah. I'm sure everybody.
Yeah, they're like, hey, any word yet? Any word yet?
So, if we're looking at just people in their regular life, what kind of suggestions would you have for increasing our willingness to give second chances to others?
Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is put everything that you've ever thought that you're ever certain about, just set it aside.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what happens is when we go in and we're certain about something, that closes a door. Walking in and seeing, a gentleman who's bald, who's 6'4", covered head to toe in tattoos, who stands in a certain way with his hips cocked and and it just has that quote unquote that look. Yeah, you can immediately go, oh no, this is not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
But you see that dog with a teeny tiny chihuahua in his arms?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you watch him turn into a puddle. And you realize, yeah, it's real fun. And you realize that what you thought is not what's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things is I think we really need to set aside all of our preconceived notions. That if we haven't experienced it and we have an opinion about it, chances are it's based on somebody else's thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to make those thoughts our own. We need to assess it for ourselves.
I think that's really true. That actually came up, that exact concept came up in a Facebook discussion today. I have a separate podcast, Your Family Dog, and Dr. Risa Van Fleet was on there talking about how to handle difficult conversations. Yeah. And one of the things was when we're so certain, yeah, we're creating a barrier and a distance. And so sometimes to just try to understand where the other person's coming from and let go of some of our certainty and be open in that moment to what kind of connections can we have. So it's an interesting, just an hour ago, somebody said, wow, that really kind of blew my mind. Now I'm thinking I have to go put a link here so that person can listen to this one too.
Oh, too funny.
Yeah.
Funny. Yeah. And it's hard.
It is hard to do. I think everything falls into that category, doesn't it? Where it's like simple but not easy,
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
Reframing.
Yeah.
Totally simple concept. Yeah. Not always easy to do. Set aside your certainty. Sure.
Sure. Oh, too
yeah.
funny.
Parent differently, Oh, yeah, I've been doing it this way for X number of years. I'm just going to change the way I parent. But it's worth doing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's worth making the efforts. So providing those second chances for others is a real valuable thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, we're all going to need a second chance at some point in our life.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been really interesting, a very fun conversation. One question I do like to ask most of my guests is if your dog could speak English, and I know you have two, Gibson and Wrigley. So if Gibson and Wrigley could speak English, how would they describe you?
Oh, gosh. This is where I'm so glad that dogs cannot speak English. I would say probably Gibson would complain that I was, one, boring, and two, not home enough to be with him, to keep my hands on him at all time. He's a German Shepherd mix, and he loves being right next to me, and he's a goober. And Wrigley, how would he describe me? Not as forthcoming with his treats as he would like. Yes, he is my food hound. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. More treats, Mom.
Okay. Well, now you at least know where you can improve. They're probably willing to give you a second chance to be less boring and more generous.
Yes. And I would totally love to be home way more than I am.
So how could listeners learn more about your program?
The best way right now, always, is to find us on Facebook, and it's The Positive Dog, and it's PAW. So The Positive Dog Prison Training Program. We are on Facebook. Our little profile picture is a little pen and ink drawing of a black lab, and it's Airway Heights Correction Center is the prison that we are partnered with. that's going to be the best way to find us and to be in contact, because you can message us through that link and also get caught up on what we've done up to this point with looking at pictures. You can also touch base. They can also touch base with Carol Burns through the Diamonds in the Rough website, and it's Diamonds in the Rough. It's ruff.com, and pop an email off to her from there as well.
Super. And I'll put links to both of those in the show notes so that everyone can get right to those. This has been a really interesting conversation today, Kim. I'm so glad you could come on.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun. Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
I was really excited to talk to you because I was truly blown away by the program that you and Carol created there. It was awesome. So I think the whole concept of second chances and the fact that we all need them can hopefully make us a little bit more generous in offering them to others and really looking at how we can change our behavior. And bit by bit, we're all going to get there.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. It's always, always baby steps. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, I hope that you will tune in and subscribe. Please, please, please leave a review, because reviews are how other people find the show. That makes a big difference. And definitely share it with your friends. So anyone who you know who might enjoy conversations about how to help animal care professionals feel better every day, we would love to have them at Unleashed at Work and Home.